Welcome to Success Matters. If you're enjoying the series, please tell others and don't forget to follow and subscribe. You'll be the first to hear when the next episode is published. My guest today is Steve Lane, a remarkable individual who, after years of chasing financial abundance, had an awakening that changed the course of their life forever. It's a story of self-discovery, compassion, and the incredible power of love. Steve is a successful IT and cybersecurity specialist who, along with his wife, had seemingly achieved it all: wealth, status, and material possessions. But they felt their life was empty. Something profound shifted within them, and they began questioning the true meaning of success. Steve started to think about what footprint they would leave behind in this world. And in the pursuit of happiness, they embarked on a journey that led them to a decision that would transform not only their life, but the lives of two incredible children who they adopted. As Steve said in a recent LinkedIn post of his, "Take the time to be kind and to give back to the world without expecting anything back, and amazing things will happen." Steve, thank you very much for joining me on today's Success Matters podcast. We've known each other for a while, really, through work. It was about 12 years ago. I think you looked it up the other day when we sort of first met. And at the time, well, I think still you're working in cybersecurity. So how did you end up in the world of cybersecurity, and what was the attraction of that for you?
Well, that's quite an interesting story, I suppose, because I guess I'm one of these kids who grew up with the ZX80, the ZX81, the VIC-20 and all that kind of stuff. And so I started in computing when I was 10 years old.
Right.
And added to that as well, my grandfather in the war had quite a bit to do with sort of cryptography and all that kind of stuff. So I remember he gave me a Bumper Boys book, as it was called, a Bumper Boys book of ciphers. And so it was his influence really in sort of the codes and ciphers. And the other thing as well that influenced me when I was little was my mum and dad, at a very early age, we moved out to West Africa. And of course, there was no television out there. We're talking in the 1970s. And my mum and dad bought me a shortwave radio. And one day, tuning the shortwave radio, I came across a numbers station. And I was utterly fascinated by the world of spies. This must be an amazing world kind of thing with these number stations.
Okay.
And the number I used to listen to was a German number station. And I had German friends, and I used to try to write everything down. Of course, I used to try to break the codes, but what I didn't realize is just that's not possible.
So this was a shortwave radio station where they just spoke numbers.
Well, the number stations. So if you're not familiar with what the numbers,
No, I'm not.
So the number stations still exist. I think the only one that currently broadcasts is kind of something called the Lincolnshire Poacher, okay. And so they have a pattern, and they read out messages, and the messages were the one that I used to listen to were for spies in Eastern Europe. And it was instructions for spies to carry out certain action. Okay. And it uses a one-time pad, a form of impenetrable cryptography, which is basically a grid that is read, and it consists of lists of words and lists of numbers, and it has a particular format. And so the Lincolnshire Poacher, for example, is a number station that's really sort of well known with the intro to it and everything. So the intro is exactly the same. But yeah, I mean, they used to read. So I learned the numbers in German when I was 8 years old.
Okay,
just by listening to the number station, and my German friends at the time teaching me how to write it, and I used to write them down. So I was fascinated by these number stations. With my grandfather's influence and the Bumper Boys book of codes and ciphers, I used to think I was going to be capable of breaking these codes and finding out what the spies were up to. Right. That became, I think, the sort of the spark and computing and everything that sort of led to an interest eventually in in sort of getting into computing professionally. And then obviously I made that transition from sort of an IT world into a cyber world.
That's pretty fascinating, actually. Do you still have that bumper book of ciphers?
I do not, and I have searched eBay many times for it, and I know the cover of it, and I know exactly what it is. It is called Bumper Boy's Book of Codes and Ciphers, and it must be a really old book, and I guess one day it'll turn up. So if anybody's listening to this podcast, look, please do contact us and tell me where I can get a copy. I'd love to read it. But, it had the typical sort of like either ciphers in it and all sorts. So I remember and Pigpen and all sorts. The kids' ciphers that that are fairly easy to crack. But I remember, of course, I used to write sort of secret code letters to various people, including a very innocent 9-year-old girl who I considered to be my girlfriend when I was that.
Okay. Was she able to crack your code?
She was, and so she used to write back in code as well. And so, there you go. So there was an embryonic spark, and it's always been there with me, really. And of course, spending my weekends coding on fairly primitive computers on ZX8081s and VIC-20s, because in those days, of course, if you wanted to play a game, most of the time you'd get it out of a magazine as a listing, and you'd have to type the code in to get it to work. Then it wouldn't work. You made a typo, and then you'd spend hours bug fixing, but in the process of learning to bug fix, you'd actually learn how to code in the first place.
We're showing our age here when we're talking about ZX81s.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. It'll be a whole world of people listening to this thinking, what is a ZX81 or a VIC-20?
I do feel very old because sometimes because I went fairly recently to the National Museum of Computing, which is sort of an annex of Bletchley Park. The home of cybersecurity, and the stuff in there that I used to work on and used to play on and all sorts. So, you are old. Definitely, the definition of age is when stuff that you have used or that you've worked on professionally is now in a museum.
In a museum, yeah. That's very true, yeah. So, I got in touch with you, Steve, to come on to my podcast because you posted a post on LinkedIn, which really speaks to the heart of what Success Matters is about, the podcast series that I operate. So in your post, you talked about how success, the idea of success has changed for you, and, how things have, life itself has changed for you as well. So would you mind sharing a bit of that with us, please?
I was one of these kids that grew up with this sort of Lamborghini poster and all that kind of stuff. And my idea when I was young and even in my sort of early 20s of success was being sort of financially independent and, making as much money as I could and driving, fancy cars and all that kind of stuff and everything. And I guess I never got to the point that I could buy a Lamborghini, but I certainly got to the point where my wife and I were in a situation where we were both earning very good money. She was a management accountant in the NHS. Let's be honest, as we both know, the IT industry is paid quite well, and so we went through the sort of early sort of 2000s where we had quite a lot of money and we had quite a lot of sort of freedom, and we'd go on we go on really nice holidays, flash holidays. It cost us quite a lot of money in those times. We had the brand new car parked in the driveway. We had the sort of 4-bedroom detached house. Why we needed that with just two of us, I don't know. But we had all of that, and it felt hollow. It felt empty. It felt meaningless. And so, what was the point of it? And one day I kind of reflected a little bit on what would I like to have written on my headstone if I died. Okay. Unless that sounds maybe a little bit macabre, but it's it's about really sort of like understanding, what do I want to be remembered for? Do I just want to go through life and have a good time and have great holidays and all that kind of stuff? Or do I actually feel like I actually want to have a purpose in life?
Right.
And so success for me changed in that sense.
This would have been about how long ago?
Oh, it's in about 2004. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I mean, prior to 2000 as well, I mean, I was a contractor and I made an absolute killing on the Millennium with a bunch of mates, for example, and I made so much money there that I actually went and joined a yacht race and sailed across the Atlantic on the yacht race.
Oh, wow.
All the stuff. So, I had it. I had all of that. I kind of got all that experience. But in 2004, it sort of started to change. We started to think about adopting children. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do so in that time and everything. But it really came to a head, I guess, in 2008, when very sadly my only sister died. We really assessed what life was about, and actually made me realize that life is potentially quite short. She was only in her 30s, and it was quite, she was young. So it made me really think, well, if I go to my grave today, then actually, really, I've done nothing.
Right.
So there's nothing that's going to get written on my head. So we did change. And so I've come to the conclusion that success really is not just about how much you make in financially or anything like that, or what car you drive. It's about the footprint that you have on the earth. What do you leave behind? What impact you make, right? And it's always surprised me how little actions that you take can have a very big difference and make a big difference to people around you. And I think that success is very much about the impact you have on the world, how you can do things that will make, even if they seem really trivial, can make quite a significant change to the world around you. And it's got to be thought about in the round. It's not just success, it's financial success. It's much wider than that for me.
Yeah. It's probably kind of like the wheel of life type of aspects, right? A lot of coaches use that model, and there's the financial piece, but then there's the spiritual, the friends and family. There's all of the spokes, if you like, to that wheel. And if you look at success just through the light of, or the lens of financial, then you're neglecting all the rest, right? And you probably had that moment when your sister died, that actually, what am I on this planet for, and what am I doing here, and what legacy am I leaving?
Yeah. And in preparation for this podcast, I read a number of sort of what people's definition was of success.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that I picked up on was somewhere it says that success is about living a life that you can feel proud of in retrospect. And so that speaks to me in terms of like, what do I want written on my headstone, right? When I'm gone, how do I be remembered? Will anybody even care in 100 years from now that I ever existed? And how can I make changes and do things that actually, people might remember in 100 years for whatever reason? So that's very much how I live my life.
Right.
There's lots of things that we can talk about, and examples of things that that I can sort of point at in that.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. Let's explore some of the things you've done once you came to this sort of thought process that there's more to life.
There is more to life, very much. So, I mean, one of the biggest things that I've done is that we adopted 2 children. And obviously everybody, a lot of people anyway, they have a desire to want to nurture and to be parents. But for us, it was much more than that. It was about really an act of altruism, because we wanted to try to give children that have had a very difficult start in life an opportunity in life. And we wanted to potentially adopt children where actually they were harder to adopt.
Right.
And that's a phrase that's used because the children's background, the children's behavior. I mean, very sadly, children that are in the care system that end up being adopted tend to be the children of drug addicts tend to be the children of people who have made some very bad choices in life and all sorts of stuff. But there is a bit of a spectrum there. And so we ended up at the far end of the spectrum. We wanted to do something different, and we wanted to sort of make a bit of an impact in the world by seeing if we can do that. So yeah, it is very much about, of course, being a parent and having that sort of desire to nurture. But there's so much more than that with adopted children, because you're a carer and because you're an advocate for them and because you fight to get resources that you need. And you really do everything you can with every ounce of your body in a lot of ways and sort of soul to help these children try to grow up and to be successful, really, and themselves. And it's interesting defining their level of success, which is actually just being able to be sort of model citizens, go to work, pay taxes, and have a life that is what we might call very normal, rather than the life that they would have had, which would have been quite significantly different if they had continued down the track that they were going down and in the environment that they were in. So that's just one example. But I always try to help and mentor people, and without sort of mentioning names, it was interesting that recently someone looked me up on LinkedIn and reached out to me and asked me, did I used to have a business years ago fixing computers? And I said, yes. How do you know? Have you been doing? What have you been doing?
This was you, yes. This was your security kind of kicking in, right?
Yeah, kicking in. And actually, he said no. He said, you had a conversation with me, and actually, you interviewed me for a job for doing hardware maintenance. And I remembered, and he said, but I wasn't right for the job, but you gave me some really good, solid advice, and I followed that job, and now I've got a pretty good job in cybersecurity, and I'm also setting up my own business. And that one conversation made such a difference to me, and he's pointed out. So I guess there's a big contrast there between something that's very big and very dominant in my life, but also pointing out that actually just sometimes the smallest of things are just helping people, or just being kind to someone, and actually make quite a significant difference. And I'd call both of those a success.
I agree 100% that often the little things just that little conversation you had a long-term impact. It's like the 1 degree change in a flight, right? When a plane is heading somewhere, if it's traveled like thousands of miles, but 1 degree off course, it actually ends up hundreds of miles off course. But there's a positive aspect to that. By making that 1 degree change in someone's life, in the long term, their trajectory is just so much different. So I absolutely agree with that. When it comes to your children, sorry, just going back to that,
Sure.
You said they were hard. I think you used the term they were hard to place when we were kind of preparing.
Yeah,
so
they were considered to be harder to place by social services because of the fact that they have a very, very complex background.
Right.
And they have very complex mental health needs, difficulty, and considerable needs on, I have a daughter and I have a son. My daughter is now a teenager. My son is 10 and going on to being a teenager.
Right.
And so they both have their own particular individual challenges. And I guess what we think as normal, sometimes when we see other families and everything, we realize how much we have deviated from what most people would think was normal in terms of what we do and how we cope and the sort of things that we do on a daily basis. And so, we have to be their children's therapists. We do therapeutic parenting. We have to be their advocates. My wife no longer works as an accountant because it's a full-time job, not just looking after the children, but full-time job actually sort of advocating and fighting authorities and fighting for resources and all that kind of stuff. So there's so much that you don't realize when you set out to adopt children that that you have to do. And if you set out to adopt children that are sort of harder to place, harder to adopt, then let's be honest, you're going to be in for quite a difficult ride, and it is very, very challenging. But I guess the outcome of that will be that we will reflect back when the kids grown up on that. We did something that was worthwhile. A life that we can feel proud of in retrospect.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the sort of questions that came to mind as you were talking there was being given that kind of label. Then they're probably given other labels as well before you were able to adopt them. How have you managed to strip those labels off or take those labels off them so that they feel different about themselves and have a different perspective to maybe when they joined your family?
Well, I mean, let's be honest, at the end of the day, kids are kids, right? So they are primarily in. The first thing you've got to think about is that just children are children. So they don't really see themselves as harder to adopt. But what we always talk about is that they're very special children, and that we went along. We did a lot of things to actually choose them, and then I guess we say to them that unlike birth children, we chose them. They were the children that we wanted, and so we very much emphasize that, and that's very true. I mean, we had to go to 2 panel interviews, which is very intimidating. There's about sort of 20 people in the room who grill you with all sorts of questions, and you sort of very much on the spot. Well, we went to panel. We had to go to panel interview for these kids twice, but prior to that, we'd had to go to panel interview again twice. So in total, to adopt these children, we had to go to panel interview all time and get an absolute flipping grilling. So, and so we tell them these stories. We tell them that they're special. We tell them that we chose them. We tell them how much they're wanted and all this kind of stuff. So, I guess we don't strip back the label, and certainly they know they're adopted and they know their life story, and that's a really important factor. But I think that it's very much about trying to ground them in that we chose them and we really wanted them, and we still want them today, and that we're their forever family is one of the terms that we use. That's right. No matter what, no matter how difficult their behavior becomes, whatever happens, then we are still their forever family.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that must give them a lot of relief, right, to know that you're taking them on in that way.
Well, you would think so, but
they're teenagers, or they're coming on to teenagers, so I understand, maybe not.
It works with my daughter, but my son is one of the challenges, I guess, with my son is that he was removed at a very young age from his birth parents, and he'd actually been through so many care placements that by the time he came to us, we were the 5th set of adults to look after him. Right. And so you would think that all these years later, and it's now some sort of 8 years since he was placed with us, that he'd believe that this is his forever family. But this is one of the difficulties with this sort of mental health challenges and everything. It's a lot of it's pre-verbal. He feels so much that he was let down by all the adults that cared for him before. Why would these adults really say what they mean? And so, and one of the things with all adopted kids is that they actually test the boundaries all the time, and they if you really mean it. And so they will push and push and push and push and push and try to push all those buttons and try to make you cross and angry and all this kind of stuff. And we've learned techniques to remain calm and to be therapeutic, but I can't say we're always calm. There are times, but the point of therapeutic parent style is that you learn, you work with psychologists and you learn how to deal with those kind of stuff and how to attribute meaning to behavior and to deal with whatever's behind the behavior rather than the behavior itself. It's why it's quite complicated and certainly challenging. I've given many people this analogy before. The challenge when we actually sort of started adoption is that we thought we were sort of going to walk from London to Fort William and climb Ben Nevis, and actually we're on our way to Kathmandu and we're about to get to base. And that journey actually never seems to stop. So a magnitude larger in terms of challenge than we ever anticipated. But going back to success and what I said, about our life before all of this, our life was, we got plenty of money and we got no problem at all in terms of like having great holidays and everything. But life felt empty. Now life is full of challenge and colour, and and so I'm sure that again, back on this, and we'll feel like we had some meaning. And what I guess we hope is that we've changed these children's lives enough that one day they'll be talking to their grandchildren about us, and that's where will we get remembered in 100 years, maybe.
Well, I'm sure you will be. What you're doing here with the two children is, let's face it, not many people would do that. Not many people would do what you're doing, and it takes a lot of grit, determination, persistence, and courage to do what you're doing. So I'm sure that they will talk to their children and their children's children about the great work that you and your wife have done with them.
Well, maybe, but you don't know, and there's uncertainty with it all. But that just adds to the colour in the yeah, absolutely.
But as you say, it's brought colour to your life that maybe this type of colour wasn't there before.
It wasn't there before, and so financial success is just one lens, and instead of looking through a lens, life is now like looking through a prism. Instead of looking through a magnifying glass or something, now it's which is not sort of giving you all the colours that you'd get from a prism. We're now looking through life through a prism.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So you said you'd read some quotes or books about what success means to other people. I mean, you've kind of covered it already in terms of what success means to you. What else have you kind of discovered along this journey as to what success means to you?
I think really it's about the fact that it's a form of self-actualization. It's a form of realizing the goals and objectives that you set yourself in life. And for some people, and I've got full respect for them, that is that they want to become financially wealthy and they want to buy themselves their Ferrari, their yacht and all that kind of stuff and everything. But it's never, and it was like that to start off with myself. But it's not just about that, and it's about. I'm a very goal-oriented individual. It's about really sort of like going beyond. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy, it's going beyond your basic needs. You need food. We all need shelter. We all need those kind of things, to the point of actually the top of the pyramid, which is about self-actualization, which is about achieving things that are really important to you. And I think those important things talk to your values and your found stone, the thing that really defines you as an individual. It's definitely about the prism and not the magnifying glass.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought this thing about values, because that's really the fundamental of it, right? What you value, what's really important to you is what will drive you forward. And if you can find things that speak to your values, then that makes life so much better for you. And that just really fills your life with enjoyments.
Yeah. And so, I guess one of my values is definitely about sort of society and helping people and making a difference to to the world around me. You know, I worry very much about the impact that I have on the climate and all those kind of things. I try to do what I could do to minimise all the sort of the impacts that I have overall. You know, quite a challenging thing to do, really, but we try to do sort of small things that we can. But you know, it's for me. I have, yeah. I mean, my values and the person that I am is about actually about sort of really helping people and really trying to sort of bring people with me on the journey, and and having an impact, a positive impact on the society and the world around you. I mean, like, here's another example of something that I do that sort of extols those values. On a Saturday morning at the moment, you know, I go to a fixers. So these are things that are up and down the country. There are fixers cafes, and so I go to my local fixers cafe, and I repair things. I'm pretty good at repairing computers and printers. Right, that's what I was trying to do. But I repair, you know, help repair toasters and whatever it is and everything, so that we keep them out of the tip. And this weekend, for example, there's a whole bunch of laptops that was destined for the tip being dropped off, and myself and one other individual are going to see what we can do in terms of either refurbishing them for sale and using the money for charity, or we're going to refurbish them and sort of donate them, as I've done before. Actually, at the previous, where we met at my previous employer, where they donated me a load of laptops, and I gave those to scouts. I refurbished save. So, you know, that's what I mean by living your values and success related to the values and the impact that you're having on society.
That's great. And as you know, I ask previous guests to ask a question for my next guest. I think you've answered this in many regards, but I will ask the question anyway. And she did say, ask the person to dig deep when you ask this question. So
I would say, who do you think you are?
Who am I? Wow. I guess I'm the product of genetics of my mum and dad, you know, and my identity as an individual. I'm also, as well, the product of the environment that I grew up in. So I grew up at a very young age. We didn't have a lot of money, but then my dad got a job out in West Africa, and we moved out to Nigeria, and so that was a very enriching kind of situation. But it also introduced me to seeing people who had extreme poverty, and whilst there is a world of incredible opportunity out there, you know, for someone who was a child, every weekend on the beach, and you know, sunshine all the time, and you know, opportunity to learn to go sailing and all that kind of stuff. There was also the other opposite side of it, which was observing people with extreme poverty, seeing people, unfortunately and very sadly, sort of die by the side of the road, and nobody cared for them, and them there and all that kind of stuff. So you know, that's had a big influence on me. And then I got sent to boarding school and got sent away from my mom and dad. And whilst I was at boarding school, that's when my grandparents started caring for me, and that's where my granddad had quite a considerable influence on me, and where ultimately I got the bumper book. So I guess it's all connected. You know, at the end of the day, you are a product, I guess, of your upbringing and your childhood, your mom and dad, the environment, and you know, and the people that had sort of quite considerable influence on you whilst you were growing up. And so, you know, actually, right behind me, you probably can't see it, is when I was at boarding school, one of the housemasters there, who I spent a lot of time with because I used to go rock climbing, so I had quite a close relationship with him. And I guess he was like the father figure for me at boarding school. He gave me a note when I left, and it says, "Fortuna favet fortibus, fortune favours the brave." And so That's always been an influence on me. Well, it's actually sometimes you got to strike out. You got to be kind of a brave individual, and sometimes do things not because they're easy, but because they're hard.
And do you have a question for my next guest?
Yeah, I'm going to ask them, what do they want on headstone?
What do they want on their headstone? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So what do they want? What do they want to write on the headstone? What is it that they actually want to be remembered for? They not just of like, you know, when somebody writes an obituary, what is it that they're going to say about that person? And ultimately, what are they going to say on the headstone? So I know you're going to ask me what it's going to say on my headstone, and actually,
Yeah.
Actually, it starts, the man who lies here below would like those above to know. And I haven't finished that poem.
Okay.
It's got dots afterwards. People have suggested to me I should leave it as dot.
But yeah,
But it also connects to the sort of stuff that I've been talking about here, is that, actually it's about what I want to be remembered for is what impact did I have on the world and everything. I started being very topical. I started using ChatGPT the other day to see if I could finish that poem off or not.
Okay.
I haven't got that. I just haven't got the answer. But yeah, it's so my question is think about sort of like the headstone, your headstone. What is it that's going to be written on your headstone? Which is not about being macabre, but it is about what is it that you want to be remembered for? What is it that's going to be in the history? What is it that is going to define you, and you're going to, you're going to be remembered in your life for?
That's very, very similar to a question actually that one of my previous guests, Katerina Tay, she is a end of life doula, so she helps people who are either someone in the family's bereaved, or they're approaching bereavement, or someone is been given the last kind of moments, as it were, and she helps them with that. So she asked the question, what will be said at your eulogy? So it's a very similar kind of like,
it's a similar kind of thing. It's a similar kind of thing, because I do think that we should live our lives remembering that unfortunately we have a finite time on the planet, and and you I think you should live your life to the fullest. And I think you should definitely think about, what it is that you want to be remembered for, and the impact that I think you're going to have on the world. And because some people, by the way, it's perfectly fine for them to go and have lovely holidays and to not have kids and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And everything. But my experience of people, I know some people who are very wealthy, is actually very quietly, they are very altruistic, and they do make considerable impact on the world, even if they don't have their own kids, and they're building up quite a considerable business. So, yeah, I know a few of those people.
Because it can be things like your own business, which is employing people who are able, therefore, to make a change for their family, right? So it's not necessarily just that kind of aspect, and it's important to think about these other aspects of how you're touching other people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely, because your impact on the world, you will have an impact on the world, whether you actually even you think about it or not. You'll have an impact on the world, and it is very much about sort of like assessing what that impact is, which might actually be more sort of obtuse than you may originally think about. But I think it's just worth sitting back and considering, contemplating a little bit about what is it in my day-to-day actions, in living my life day to day, what is it that I am changing, either deliberately or inadvertently, because you will be doing one or the other.
Yeah. I like your analogy of also the footprint you're leaving behind, right? Because that footprint could be a murky, mucky, muddy footprint, or it could be a very clean footprint, and people can kind of take their own perception of you and the life you led based on that footprint you left behind.
Yeah.
I've got images of like a pristine beach with a nice clean set of footprints there.
Well, I always think about actually the footprints found from Stone Age man along the Isle of Wight, actually, at low tide. And those footprints are of an adult an adult male, and some small children as well. So and those are echoes of someone who lived so long ago.
Yeah.
And those are their footprints and their footprints on the earth. Well, I'm not going to leave physical footprints on the earth, but I think that's quite a good sort of metaphor, really, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So, Steve, we're at the top of our time now. It's been a great conversation. I'm sure we could talk for another 2-3 hours. As we said, as we were kind of getting ready for this, we could maybe be those two men down the pub who are putting the balls to rights. But unfortunately,
That's
we've kind of run out of time. If people wanted to get in touch with you to either find out a bit more about the journey you've been through, or if they're thinking of adopting or something of that nature, is there a best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, to be honest, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy to find me on LinkedIn, and message me on LinkedIn or send me a connection request. I'm open-minded to that. That's really the best way. So if you go onto linkedin.com/in/Stephen with a V-E Lane, that's me on LinkedIn.
Thank you once again, Stephen. It's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Great. Yeah, it's been a good conversation. I agree with you, Sanjay. And it's been a real pleasure actually being part of your podcast.
Oh, great. Thank you. If you'd like to find out more about how you can find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.